Welcome back into another episode of Rock Boys Football. Today we're going to give you a little week 0 breakdown. Few games that we talked about coming into the week, and we're going to give you guys our thoughts and opinions of the games as we head to week 1. Before we get started with the show, I'm going to turn it over to my brother and let him take a little victory lap on us Nebraska fans. Give it to us.
So yeah, I mean, what I think we saw Saturday is basically Nebraska football under Scott Frost, and that's making just an endless number of inopportune mistakes. I think the one that stands out the most is that punt. I mean, you got a guy catching a punt on the 1 yard line, running into the end zone, and then throwing it out of bounds. So that's just like a preposterous error, and it just indicative of what they do. The roughing the passer, negating the pick, and then taunting again. Just Nebraska football, dropping snaps. Like, you could read off a laundry list, and it's kind of amazing that they kept it reasonably competitive at the end of the day, only losing by about 7. Because when you're shooting yourself in the foot like they do, and that again, it does point to the fact that you said they were a more talented team. Of course they were. Like, I think they win the majority of games they play. Not the vast majority. My guess is like maybe 50 to 60% if you did like 1,000 games. But that just, again, it stands out. Like, you can't take Nebraska as that big of a favorite against probably any Power 5 team, maybe with a few small exceptions, because they just are incapable of playing winning football.
Yeah.
So that's just what I mean. That just came out. I just think you given them that many points against the Illini, like, just can't take them. Not winning program.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much I can argue. Going into it, I just looked at talent against. I mean, that's normally what wins college football games is if one team's just it's the what is this? It's the Jimmy and Joe's, not the X's and O's, and normally that's true. The better teams who've recruited better and have more talented players normally win football games against teams who are less talented. This couldn't have been a bigger mismatch. I mean, Illinois recruits average about 45 national rank in the country. Nebraska's been inside the top 25 the last 3 years. You would think Nebraska can win this game, and that's kind of why I was uncomfortable taking Illinois, even at that value. Obviously, I was wrong. I'll own up to it. Talking about the getting into the game, Adrian Martinez looked really weak from the pocket, and he missed some big throws. He had a guy in like a wheeler route that could have been. He is a ball holder. He had a guy in a wheeler route that needed to be put on him, overthrew him, would have been a touchdown. They had to settle for a field goal. Obviously, the strip sack didn't hurt or didn't help. You mentioned the punt, and there's one. The interception where they were up 7, had a pick, and then due to roughing the passer and taunting, got called back.
Terrific errors.
I mean, it's hard to win a game giving up a scoop and score or like a pick 6. And it's harder when you just keep shooting yourself in the foot as many times as they did.
And just to go on Nebraska a little bit more is I really don't think they have a guy on offense who is capable of being a big playmaker with the exception of Martinez. I really thought the only time they got anything rolling was through Adrian, and that was him only kind of scrambling and making some plays that way. But
Oliver Martin was good, I'll say. I thought Oliver Martin looked all right, but he's not. I agree. He's no guy. He's no guy that you're running your offense through. Yep.
And Marquise Stepp just, I don't know that he has. I wasn't wildly impressed by his game.
He only had 3 carries.
I don't know.
He only had 3 carries. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest surprise of the game to me was I was on Twitter with a few of the Nebraska fans. Like, they got to run the ball. I mean, they're bigger, stronger. They have really big backs. I mean, both Irving and Marquise Stepp are 220 plus. Marquise Stepp's almost 240, I think. Let's get downhill, run the ball on these guys. And they ran the ball. I mean, Irvin averaged 2.8 yards a carry. Marquise Stepp averaged 3.3 yards a carry. That's just not going to cut it. The only real success they had running the ball was Adrian Martinez
And that wasn't even designed.
No, it wasn't. It was more like just scrambling out of the pocket.
Which is alarming too, because I'm not convinced the Illini can play run defense at a particularly high level. I mean, just because they stopped Nebraska, but Nebraska stops themselves. So I don't know. I don't think that bodes well for that program at all. And because I didn't even think Illinois looked good. It was just like Illinois, I still think they have some work to do. I mean, Brandon Peters, I know he only had a short little stint in the game, but he was kind of what he was last year, fairly inconsistent, not
he was 3 or 4, but he was holding the ball. He was
taking
completed his balls,
right.
But he was holding the ball. I mean, you got to be if you're an Illini fan, you got to be happy with what you saw to Artur Satowski.
He actually looked all right. Yeah,
he looked all right. Ran an offense that got the job done.
And the run game was good.
The run game was good. I've
3
seen
really good
Chase
backs
Brown.
In my mind.
Yeah, Love. I don't think is as good as the other two, but I mean, he also was running the ball pretty well.
And I think Nebraska was broken a little bit, because at the beginning of the game they did a fairly good job stopping the run, and
they did get broken down. You're right.
And it was just, I mean, what are you gonna do when you're getting put in horror spots by that offense? And just, I don't know. I'm not convinced Scott Frost knows how to coach players. I think he can recruit and he can do some things well in terms of getting talent to his programs a little bit, but I don't think he knows how to coach, especially in a high pressure situation, which Nebraska certainly is. Like, those fans expect to win, and at UCF they definitely did not, and he exceeded expectations, but I'm not sure he's got a big coach spirit to him. I think he loses his mind and freaks out when things get hard, and I think that reflects in that team. I think he doesn't control himself. So
I heard in the presser, he was like, "Yeah, we watched their spring game and we guessed that they were going to run this offense." I'm like,
such a stupid response. So stupid.
If you're a Division I coach thinking another Division I team is going to run the exact offense that they ran in the spring game, that they allowed ESPN to interview coaches while the spring game was happening, you're out of your mind. Like, you're out of your mind.
Yeah, what did he say? Half his game plan was disrupted by that. Like, so you just didn't have a plan then? Like, Scott Frost, like, come on, clean it up.
It was just bad. I mean, the interview after was not something great. That I think Nebraska fans are just kind of, there's not really much. I don't think there was a single thing he could say to be like
I just don't expect him to handle press conferences as well. He's not doing
a very good job at a program where you're under the light, you're under the microscope almost every week, and he just doesn't seem like he's ready. Which is unfortunate for Nebraska fans, because I think he was really highly touted, and it seemed to almost everybody was going to be a good hire. I don't think you would talk to many people 4 years ago who thought this was going to be bad, and it's turning out to be a disaster so far.
Yeah, he was their guy. That they were relying on him to kick him up back to prominence, and does not seem like that's happening. So.
Yeah, and like realistically, like looking at Illinois' schedule, like I don't know how many games they're going to be winning. We're going to see them, and we might talk about that UTSA game. They're only 6-point favorites against them.
That's fascinatingly low.
That is fascinatingly low, because they're not a bad team, and they'll be more talented than UTSA. So that's one to definitely keep our eyes on. But
yeah, I don't know. How long do you think Scott Frost gets?
He's not getting out of this year.
They probably are going to have to at least beat either Wisconsin or Iowa and then finish with a winning record. It seems like to have a chance of him even keeping his job. But
I mean, and they're gonna get embarrassed by Oklahoma. They might lose by 50, and I feel like by that time, they're expected to beat Fordham, and then they're probably expected to beat UB. Although UB's not a horrible team. In the way
they'll be able to challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
If they play like that. So.
But even if they are 2-1 going to Oklahoma, they're going to lose by 50 to Oklahoma, and I don't see them. They might be a favorite in maybe the Purdue game.
Purdue. I think they'll have a shot against Minnesota, depending on what they are.
But I don't see them being the favorite in any other team So it's not looking good for them. If he doesn't win over 5 games, I think if they don't go bowling, if they don't win 6 games, I would have a hard time seeing him being in Lincoln next year. So
Yeah.
okay, let's move on to the Hawaii UCLA game, which is the game we kind of heavily invested our time in. We watched a lot of film on UCLA. We liked them during summer scouting. And the game pretty much played out exactly kind of how we thought. We took them. I think we ended up getting them at -18. Just thinking Chip Kelly's going to be running a fast-paced offense. They're going to put up a lot of points. And they run an aggressive defense where they like to bring pressure. They like to bring guys from their linebacker, safety, even the corner spot, forcing some turnovers. And that's just exactly what happened. Starting with their run game was just about as dominant as you could possibly be. Zach Charbonnet all of a sudden transfers from Michigan as Barry Sanders, which is sick.
Yeah, he looked awesome.
You knew Zach Charbonnet runs the ball hard. He's 6 feet, 220. Like, he runs the ball hard. He's hard to be brought down, but he was never that elusive in space. He was never that twitchy in space. He looked way better and way more comfortable in space. Him and Britton Brown are one of the better running back duos in the country. And
then they put up what they get 41 with 44 maybe with DTR. I didn't even think DTR played particularly
he only threw
well
for 100.
He
threw 50%. He completed 50% of his passes for 100.
And missed some bad passes. So
he only ran for 16 yards. So
yeah, no, I mean that those running backs can really play, and that bodes well. I think UCLA looks like they look like kind of that really high level athletic team that might be able to really do some things in the Pac-12 this year. That LSU game, I know we'll get to it later this week, but that's going to be really interesting. That'll kind of show if they're truly kind of getting close to that elite athletic ability team versus, I mean, it was Hawaii, so take it with a grain of salt. Hawaii's not pulling like your classic 4 and 5 star kids, so it was but they looked awesome. And I think flipping over to the defense, I know that we talked about the aggressive nature of that defense, but I think we underestimated how good that defensive line is, because
they're good.
They really didn't need to be that aggressive. They played very aggressive at the beginning and they were swarming them, but then they kind of started to let that defensive line cook on their own, and they were still taking care of it and getting after Hawaii all day. So
number
I think
45, Mitchell Ajude. I think that's how you say his name. He's a specimen when you look at him. Long, twitchy, but if he can continue to learn how to use that length, because he has the tools, I'm very excited to see how he kind of plays.
And I remember I thought 37 on that defensive line looked incredible too. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do when you have a defensive line that's that athletic and disruptive. I think, yeah, they'll have a shot to be better than I even really thought. Just because I think they're what I kind of underestimated is how talented they are, because they haven't been recruiting USC type level lately. So
yeah,
I think it's the athleticism, the size, they had that look of a big premier D1 team that's super talented. So I'm really excited for what they can do, and of course they're going to be well coached and Chip Kelly in college. So
I think it's important to continue to recognize that it was against Hawaii, and I like UCLA as a team. I did when we watched them this summer, but when they're playing LSU's going out to the West Coast. That game's been creeping. It started at around 6.5, 7.5. It's all the way down to 3.5. And with UCLA's pretty much dominant play style, I mean, they looked phenomenal. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets to 2.5 or a pick 'em. That's where you might start thinking LSU might be the better bet, because I like UCLA, but I think people might be a little too excited about them. And when they're not the best athletes on the field, which they won't be when they play LSU, we'll see.
I mean, get that it was Hawaii, but Hawaii is not like Furman or something. Like Hawaii's a really pretty good mid-major football team.
It's down to
Generally,
minus
like,
3 now. It's down to
they're
minus
gonna
3. So
that
it
is low,
just
but they're
goes
gonna
down and down.
like Hawaii bangs with the Boise States of the world, so they're like a solid mid-major football team. And UCLA just did exactly what you would want to see an Alabama type team do. It's like beat the brakes off them and at no point make it look at all competitive, which is exactly what they did. And
yep.
Yeah, I get that it was Hawaii, but it doesn't change the fact that they look bigger, stronger, faster by like leaps and bounds than that Hawaii team did. And that's certainly not what you would have seen out of UCLA probably as far back as 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think the only concerning thing that I have about UCLA from Saturday is that DTR really did not play that good.
No, he's got to play better.
He tweeted out, he's like, yeah, I need to play better. He missed a lot. And I think a lot of it was coming in the first quarter. I mean, they didn't really throw the ball after the first quarter. They were up like 28-3. I think a lot of it came early.
To see him, try to settle in a little bit.
And you got those jitters, first game at home, first time playing in front of people in 2 years. Ball sailed on him a little bit. We'll
and then
see.
They just ran it.
The thing is, it's going to be a lot, because that's what they could do. I mean, if I'm Chip Kelly, I'm probably trying to get him a few more throws.
Yep, I agree.
Because he's going to have to come out and be ready to play for 4 straight quarters against LSU. He's not going to be able to miss throws like that next week. Anyways, let's talk a little bit about it. I mean, it's down to 3. I would probably like LSU more and more as that gets closer. I worry about LSU. I think I'm low on LSU and higher on UCLA than consensus. But at the end of the day, LSU's still got some really good football players on that team. So we'll have to grind a little bit of tape there. But that game will definitely be a game that we'll talk about later on this week when we're kind of giving you our picks and giving you our breakdown.
Yeah, because right off the cuff, I am not convinced on it either way because I would love LSU or UCLA probably at where it opened.
Yeah.
And now it's like I don't know that you're getting
at a pick 'em. I probably like LSU.
You'd want because I haven't seen LSU or UCLA prove themselves yet against a big boy team.
Just notoriously, whenever Pac-12 teams play SEC teams, it doesn't go well. It doesn't. It's different.
I agree, but I think that stops when you get into the mid-range SEC. I think when you see Auburn and Oregon, or Auburn played Washington and Oregon, I believe, and those were kind of Auburn teams that I'd say were closer to maybe what LSU was last year. Or
you're talking about 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Auburn went to Oregon and played them and beat them in a close game.
It's 2 and 3. So and then Auburn played Washington and also Washington hung with them. So it's like both times unless it's Alabama, Georgia, not that I can remember Georgia ever playing Pac-12 teams recently at all, but it's not that I'm not convinced that the kind of the mid-range of the SEC can go dominate Pac-12 teams at will.
Yeah, I guess that's what do you not to be too combative, but Oregon was a top 10 team in the country. Auburn was not, and I don't think UCLA is that Oregon level. And I think LSU is higher than just like a middle of the road SEC team. I think they're much more of a top tier team. And I know you disagree on that. If you guys want to go check out the LSU video, check that out. Dill does not like the team very much. And it's not like I'm that high on them either, but I would definitely – it'd be foolish of us not to recognize, and I just got burned for saying this last week, but LSU has an extraordinary amount of talent on that team.
Yeah,
I don't think they don't have Scott Frost coaching them either. Not that I think.
But when Chip Kelly is at his best, he can beat anybody.
Yeah, he's really good.
And he was doing that at Oregon. even when Oregon wasn't recruiting high-level talent, he was still dominating, and he could have hung with any football team in the country. So there is something to say of Chip Kelly's ability to raise guys' talent level and play a system that fits what he has perfectly, more so than any other coach I can really remember. Maybe Mike Leach at Texas Tech was doing a very similar thing when he was hanging with really good Texas and Oklahoma teams. So I don't know. It's hard to count Chip Kelly out. And I don't think LSU is that good. So it's a game that I'm somewhat conflicted on.
I think I am too, and I'll need to go read and watch just a little bit more LSU. Because I've watched plenty of UCLA, so I need to get more into LSU and figure out what I actually think about them. And I'll probably just keep monitoring the line. If it gets down to a pick'em, I probably just will have to make myself take LSU. Value would be too good. Anyways, in the last 5 minutes of the show, just give us some of the games that you're looking at that you think you're going to kind of dive deeper into. Potential value, good picks. Let's hear it.
So I think the first game that I find very fascinating is that Michigan State Northwestern game, just because it doesn't make a ton of sense to me that I feel like Northwestern's going to get like a carryover effect in terms of how people value them. That'll move into this year, but like Northwestern's not a team that can lose the talent they lost. So I'm not convinced they should be favored against a Michigan State team that, albeit I don't think is quite like, I don't love Michigan State by any means. It's more that I just really dislike Northwestern. So that's one of the games I'm really excited about. Really excited about the Indiana-Iowa game just because that's kind of my sweet spot of games, is like those pick'ems against with two teams that I'm kind of familiar with in the Big Ten just by proxy being a Michigan fan. So those are probably my two, aside from the Clemson Georgia. That's just obvious. Everybody loves that game. That's going to be an awesome game. Really interesting bet. But those are my two games that I think people isn't going to get a ton of attention or excitement, but I think are super interesting games from maybe a betting perspective.
Yeah, I think mine, Ohio State 13.5. I could certainly see them winning by more than 2 touchdowns. I know it's at Minnesota, but this Ohio State team is just so good on offense. The only reason I wouldn't take it is if I do think that they might take a half to get the chemistry down with the new quarterback, which I don't think so. Again, obviously Stroud is a very talented quarterback, but he's also got the easiest job in football. 2 great tackles, 2 of the best receivers in the country, top 3 tight end in the country. Good run game. So I like that. I mean, Duke minus 6.5 at Charlotte. That's another one of those, like, although Duke stinks, like I'm not a Duke guy.
Yeah, it stands
Charlotte's
out
not
as
that good. And I think Duke will win by a touchdown. So I like that. They just released the Wake Forest money line. Interesting. Minus 8,000. Or juggernauts. I do like the Michigan State game too.
What about Maryland, West Virginia? That's one that I
like West
Virginia,
talk about. Yeah.
That you really like, and I know you were a big West Virginia guy, and they're only 2.
I wouldn't say that. I'm like I wrote about West Virginia in the summer. I know they're returning literally every single offensive player on that team. I think besides like one offensive lineman. And they bring a guy from Virginia Tech, I want to say. So they're like super talented on offense. And I noted that. And I don't think Maryland's that good. So 2.5 points doesn't seem that much. I'm slowly looking through my notes. I made one other game. But I mean, the Illinois game, minus 6 against UTSA. That's just kind of Illinois impressed me to an extent. I know UTSA is good. I know they got obviously a stud running back and they got a pretty athletic quarterback down there. But going into Illinois, like I don't see I don't know. I'll have to look into that. These are games that just jump out at me. I have to get into the film and watch some games tonight. And obviously the Georgia Clemson game. We're gonna need to bet it. I've been a big Georgia supporter for the last couple months of the offseason. Unfortunately, they're getting ravished with injuries, and a lot of the reasons I like Georgia, um, not necessarily slipping away, but I mean, Darian Kendrick has barely practiced. Tyke Smith won't play. Darnell Washington won't play. Warren Erickson up front has been battling injuries. Eric Gilbert is, as far as I know, not with the team right now, dealing with some personal things. And so it's just a lot to lose when the margins are going to be so slim against a good Clemson team. I do love that offense or that defensive line. I like the running backs, and there's a lot of stuff I still like about Georgia. I just don't love them as much as I did 2 months ago because of those injuries. But yeah, those are the games. And I guess while we close it out, like let us know what games you guys might want us to cover, to look at, kind of similar to the preview teams. Like we want to talk ball with you guys. You want to kind of look at your teams and let you guys know what we think. And we recognize you guys are often the experts on your own team, but it's fun for us to kind of watch a couple games, read up about you guys, and let us know what we think, give you our take. So let us know in the comments what you guys think, what games you want us to take a peek at, what you got, any locks, give them to us. And we look
Always looking for locks.
Yeah, we always looking for locks. So if you got one, drop it low, drop it in the comment section. Oh, and the Indiana Iowa game, that's another game that is good. So it's a phenomenal schedule. Me and my brother will be very busy pumping out videos for you guys, kind of previewing a lot of these games. And so we look forward to getting that to you guys. And we will talk to you plenty this week. Thanks for listening again, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.